So if God exists, and wants us to believe in him, why doesn't he just show himself to everyone?
Do you mean a personal appearance, right before your eyes?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not picky. I would be convinced of his existence with any kind of demonstration from him. It doesn't have to be personal.
So, for example, if he put a giant neon cross in the sky saying Jesus saves, or inscribed the words, "Made by God," on every atom, you'd be satisfied with that?
Exactly, something like that. Does any such proof exist?
I'm afraid not.
This is why I just don't see the point of Christianity, or any other religion for that matter. There isn't any evidence.
Sure, there's evidence. It just isn't conclusive enough to be considered proof.
I know, I'm familiar with the various arguments people use for God's existence, the various things in philosophy or nature that they count as evidence. It's not enough to convince me. And as for Christ and his miracles, there isn't any evidence at all.
That's not true. There may be no archaeological evidence, I grant you that. None should be expected, by the way. Only a small number of ancient historical leaders have stone monuments to them, and Jesus wasn't that type of leader. But the primary evidence for Christ and his miracles are the testimonies of his followers.
But those people were pre-scientific. They were gullible, ready to believe in any kind of miracle without any evidence at all.
On the contrary, the Gospels are pretty forthright about the problem of insufficient evidence. People were hesitant to believe in things that they could not see, and in miraculous events that they did not witness personally. Jesus performed miracles for some people, but for others, like King Herod for example, he did not.
Wait, is that the same King Herod from the Christmas story?
No, it's one of his sons. After Jesus is convicted by a religious court for blasphemy, but before Pilate passes the death sentence, Jesus is sent to appear before Herod. Herod is very curious about the reports of Jesus' miracles, and wants to see one performed in his presence. Jesus offers nothing. Later, one of the thieves being crucified alongside Jesus insists that if he is the Son of God, he should prove it by coming down from the cross, and this thief, like Herod, gets no response. Finally, after Jesus rises from the dead, he visits the apostles, but on that occasion Thomas isn't present. Thomas refuses to believe the testimony of the others and insists he will not believe without touching Jesus with his own hands.
So a small group in first-century Palestine gets to see miracles and we just have to take their word for it, is that it?
Well, God is being selective about who sees a miracle, or who receives the gift of similar confidence in another way. But it's not just across time periods. Even within a given time and place, some people receive it and others do not. This is not just a modern problem. The God proclaimed by Christianity, whether we like it or not, is one who chooses to be hidden, or at least partially hidden, from most, and reveal himself to a few.
But if God wants everyone to believe in him, why would he be selective at all? I still don't see how anyone can believe any of this.
I've gone over it in detail in other videos. There are plenty of good reasons, plenty of circumstantial evidence, just not proof.
How can I accept anything less than proof when you still haven't really answered my original question of why God would want to reveal himself directly only in special cases, and ask the rest of us to rely on the testimony of others? It would be so much easier to get us to believe by just being blunt about it.
I understand your frustration. And from here we can only speculate, but if you'll bear with me I do have a plausible explanation.
I'm listening.
Christianity preaches that God is love, and that man is closest to knowing God when he knows love. And that what God wants for our lives is that we love him and love one another.
Yes, I've heard that.
Of course, you cannot love someone whom you don't believe exists. So belief is necessary for love.
Sure.
But you can believe someone exists without loving them. St. James makes this point in his letter in the New Testament, saying that even demons believe in God.
Yes, but if belief is the first step, then why would God not compel belief by making a bold display of who he is, and tell us directly what he wants?
Perhaps because the very act of such a display may make it harder for genuine love between God and man to develop. Imagine you got what you were asking for, and the creator of the universe miraculously appears in your car while you're driving to work. What do?
Pull over, and pinch myself, I suppose.
And then what would you do? Suppose he were to reveal himself as similar to how Christianity portrays him, giving you instruction to love him and love your neighbor, but also warning that you will suffer if you don't.
Do you mean torture for all eternity?
No, I do not. I believe that the doctrine of eternal hell is a tragic misinterpretation. We've discussed that at length in another video. But like any loving parent, discipline and warnings are some of the tools at God's disposal if needed to promote a healthy development of our souls.
Well, if God laid it all out like that, of course I'd believe, and I'd do what he said. I'd likely never forget what I saw either.
But would you really love him? And would you really love your neighbor, in the complete way that God desires of us, or would you do what's required for the sake of obeying a God who you know is watching?
I don't know. I wouldn't have much choice in the matter, I guess. But why would God care as long as I do the right things?
God can force anything he wants. He can feed all the hungry, prevent any evil deeds, and get us all to believe in him. But if he makes us love him, perhaps it really isn't love, and he knows that. He really wants us to choose him, to choose love. Given the power imbalance, I doubt most of us could freely choose to spurn him if he made himself clear. So to have a real choice, perhaps there has to be just enough room to doubt his existence, room to be confused about what exactly his wishes are. But still just enough information out there that those who seek him will find him to whatever extent is best for them in this life. Some kind of optimization where the maximum amount of genuine love flourishes.
I'm starting to see your point, but it sounds pretty theoretical.
Then let me give you a more human example. Are you familiar with the movie Coming to America?
I think so. Eddie Murphy, 1988.
Yes, that one. Murphy plays the role of the son of an African king, heir to the throne. Wealthy and powerful beyond all imagination. Everything is at his disposal, and I mean everything.
You mean, he could have any woman he wanted?
Yes. But what he wants more than anything is true love. His problem, though, is that he'll never know if someone really loves him for who he is, rather than for his money and his power.
I think I remember this movie now. He ends up going to America, where he passes himself off as a common man, living in a crappy apartment and working in a fast food restaurant.
Right. He meets the girl of his dreams, and wins her heart before revealing at the end the part about being a prince. The story of course has several twists as the prince has to hide his identity, and his love interest is very perplexed by his behavior. But in the end, it's all worth it, and they live happily ever after.
I think I see where you're going with this.
You mean, the prince in the movie reminds you just a bit of a certain Jewish carpenter from the 1st century.
Perhaps. I get the idea of wanting someone to love you for who you are. So maybe God does want to whisper to us rather than shout. Maybe he does want to leave room for doubt, and is playing some elaborate game with us for our own good, so that genuine love may flourish in the end. But why would he not do that equally? Why reveal himself so explicitly to some people and ask others to accept the message indirectly?
Again, I can only speculate. But think of the Christian model of God as our Father, and all of us as his children. Perhaps the reason we are asked to share faith, like the reason we are asked to share our worldly gifts that are also unequally given, is that the sharing itself is important in forming the family. An earthly parent often gives one child a role in helping a sibling with something, even if the parent can do the job better themselves. The process might be helpful for both the child who gives and the one who receives. Maybe something like this is going on the spiritual level too.